Greetings, Phenixx fans. I'm David Sanders, and today I thought I would take another look at Rockstar Games and Team Bondi's 2011 action-adventure detective simulator known as LA Noire. You might recall that I've reviewed this title in written form on the main site in the past. This video exists because it's yet another case of a game I wrote about, but don't feel that I did it justice in my original review. That's one reason I'm taking another crack at the game today. We'll get to a couple other reasons later in the video. Now, I'm gonna be totally upfront with you folks. This re-review isn't going to be lighthearted. It's not gonna be full of jokes by any stretch of the imagination. Despite being a Rockstar game and despite Rockstar being known for their unique brand of tongue-in-cheek humor in their games, I don't feel that LA Noire's subject matter allows for very much wisecracking aside from the occasional one-liner. I'll do my best to keep this video from getting too dark, but I want you to know from the start that everything in this context is most assuredly not going to be all sunshine and rainbows, so to speak. We'll get to all the doom and gloom later, though. First things first, let's talk gameplay. Or at least try to. Before you can step into the immaculately polished shoes of Los Angeles police officer Cole Phelps, I suspect you'll likely run into at least one of two instances of what I personally classify as issues with the Steam version of the game. Firstly, if you're particularly unlucky in this context, as I happen to be, you may not even be able to launch the game at all initially. You can install it through Steam, click play from your library, and you'll be presented with the game's launcher. Upon configuring your game settings and clicking play again within the launcher, you may find that nothing happens. Steam simply acts like you closed the game yourself with no indication that LA Noire is still running, much less about to launch. So, what gives? Well, this is too technical for me to fully understand, let alone intelligently explain, but the problem seems to have something to do with missing or incorrect registry values directly relating to the game's files. If you run into this same issue, you'll have to find a way to fix it before you can play. Thankfully, it seems I'm far from the only one to encounter this roadblock, which means there are people out there who are far more skilled than I could ever hope to be that have managed to conquer this challenge. You'll find a link to the fixes I used, and the corresponding guide to their operation in this video's description in case you end up needing it. Keep in mind that you may have to make use of this fix again if you ever uninstall and reinstall LA Noire, or if the game happens to update significantly. That covers the first of the two game-breaking issues I've encountered with LA Noire. Admittedly, the second of these gripes may not be quite as much of an issue, may not be quite as game-breaking in your opinion. Assuming you're able to get the game to properly launch and run, you'll find that you're required to create and remain logged into a Rockstar Social Club account to actually play the game, even in offline mode. Now, I've always considered everything pertaining to the Rockstar Social Club to be just as intrusive and annoying as the ill-fated Games for Windows Live, but I'm begrudgingly willing to deal with it if it means I can play all my Rockstar titles on Steam. Once you're actually in-game, you'll soon gain control of the aforementioned LAPD Officer Cole Phelps. Officer Phelps is a Stanford-educated United States Marine who served in World War II and was shipped home to California after sustaining an unspecified injury in combat. He proceeds to join the force as a uniformed beat cop in early 1947. You control him as he works his way up the professional ladder from, as he puts it, rounding up drunks and helping old ladies across the street, to becoming a respected detective who is ultimately an important part of various law enforcement bureaus within the LAPD. The game starts you off with a relatively short series of what I call tutorial cases. Since you're still considered a rookie in the eyes of your superiors at this point, you must present your best efforts to impress them if you want a chance at ever getting out of your standard blue uniform. Your first task on the force is to assist a couple of jaded homicide detectives who are half-heartedly investigating a recent murder. You're initially tasked with simply trying to find the weapon used in this murder, but Cole's initiative takes the case much deeper than that. This case introduces you to the system whereby you catalog important evidence relevant to your current case. Cole maintains a notebook whose contents will prove critical in every investigation you conduct, as you gather such things as specific pieces of evidence, like the model, manufacturer, and serial number of a gun, important addresses, and witness testimony. You'll notice certain signs, such as musical cues and controller vibrations, assuming you're using a controller that is, when you're near something that might be useful to jot down.
What kind of chumps do these homicide guys think we are?
Smith & Wesson, serial S71893.
These cues will become increasingly important when you're dealing with more complex cases that contain more clues than normal. Of course, things would be far too easy if these indications only occurred when you were near actual noteworthy evidence. That's why Cole sometimes gets a bit overzealous as a result of such cues and decides he should examine something completely irrelevant like a nearby piece of litter.
No good to me.
Thankfully, the game doesn't force you to pick up every discarded bottle you find just because you heard a musical cue, but it may take some adjusting on your part to resist pressing the examine button every time you hear a specific series of piano notes. In the final of these tutorial cases, Cole ends up being the first reporting officer to arrive at the scene of a shooting outside a shopping center. This case will introduce you to one of the other staple gameplay mechanics within LA Noire, namely the system whereby you interview witnesses and suspects, then subsequently gauge the validity of their responses to your questions. Getting the hang of this system and learning how to evaluate what suspects and witnesses tell you in an expeditious manner is absolutely crucial if you want to consistently earn that glorious 5-star rating on each case to which you're assigned.
Speak to the witness before homicide arrives, Phelps. If you think she's lying, don't be afraid to get forceful. Verbally, of course. And don't accuse her of anything without proof. Lawyers love that.
Nope.
And if you're sure she's straight up, try the general approach. See what you can coax out of her.
During each of these occasions, of which I assure you there will be tons, you have 3 options in terms of interpreting your interviewee's statements. You can accept their statement as truth, call it into doubt, or outright accuse them of lying. Whenever you take the third of these options after asking a question, your interviewee will almost definitely demand that you present proof to back up your accusation. This proof can be found and presented in the form of evidence you've cataloged in Cole's notebook. Similarly, calling a statement into doubt is essentially the same thing as accusing someone of lying, except that you're calling them out without needing to have noted any relevant evidence to point to. It's important to note that if you accuse anyone of lying, but then suddenly realize you don't have appropriate evidence to back up your claims, you can safely retract the accusation in a manner that I find hilariously awkward. This allows you to try either of the other options. You'll know whether you interpreted your interviewee's response to your question correctly or not based on, you guessed it, musical cues. To put it simply, if you hear 3 piano notes, you got the question correct. If you hear 4 notes instead, you got it wrong. Your response to your witnesses' or suspects' statements can drastically alter the outcome of a case. That's one reason why each playable quote-unquote mission in LA Noire is so non-linear and open-ended. If you get a certain question wrong during a specific interview, for example, your current interviewee might not tell you about a crucial piece of evidence you need to make a conviction or an exoneration. That, in turn, could lead you down an entirely incorrect path and even result in you mistakenly arresting someone who's completely innocent. If you find yourself stumped as to the correct response to a witness's or suspect's statement during an interview, there's a gameplay system in place that might be able to help you out with that. You see, as Cole's rank increases, he's periodically granted what's called an intuition point. These points, of which you can have up to 5 at once, can be used to either remove an incorrect evaluation of someone's response during an interview, or to instantly reveal all clues on your minimap while you're investigating a crime scene or other area of interest. The fastest way I know of to increase Cole's rank and thereby earn these intuition points more quickly is by getting as many questions correct as you can during each of a case's interviews. There are other ways of increasing Cole's rank, however, such as finding scenic landmarks or locating and driving specific hidden vehicles. You also occasionally unlock such things as a new outfit for Cole once he reaches a certain rank. These outfits, in turn, may have special passive bonuses like increasing Cole's accuracy with certain types of guns. Overall, I greatly enjoy LA Noire's campaign for its aforementioned non-linearity, the depth of the story it tells, and the presence of Rockstar's signature sandbox style. Even when you're actively working on a case, which you virtually always are, you don't have to focus solely on your relevant objectives. You can drive around looking for landmarks and hidden vehicles, pulling stunts, responding to street crimes, or striving to meet the criteria to unlock Steam achievements. That's not to say the game doesn't limit you in certain ways compared to other titles from Rockstar, such as Bully or, of course, the Grand Theft Auto franchise, because it does. For example, you can't just enter a cheat code to give yourself instantaneous access to every weapon in the game, or spawn a tank from thin air and start wreaking havoc. Cole Phelps is a law enforcement officer after all, and you do get penalized at the end of each case for causing too much of a ruckus in terms of property and or vehicle damage. However, if you've decided to throw caution to the wind or you don't care about getting a 5-star rating on a case, I think it's worth noting that virtually every car in LA Noire is more durable than seems physically possible. That means you can certainly use this fact to do some damage if you so desire, even though your use of firearms is limited to very specific circumstances and frowned upon even in such cases. That's the main reason why I say LA Noire is definitely still a Rockstar game at heart.
You're behind the wheel.
Fine. Where are we headed?
You drive. I need to go over the case notes.
Slow down!
You know the way. You can drive.
Looks like we've got the place to ourselves.
I didn't steal the car. I ran because I've got some wacky backy in the glove compartment.
How much, Cliff?
1 reefer.
We'll let it slide. You're in enough trouble.
Wacky backy, wacky backy, wacky backy.
Now folks, at this point I think I've said all I'd like to say in terms of actually reviewing LA Noire. Despite that, though, I still have more I wish to discuss, and I think this particular title is the perfect backdrop for me to say my piece. I have to warn you now, though, this is the point at which this video will definitely begin taking a much darker turn. If you don't want to expose yourself to that, I can't blame you in the slightest if you elect to stop watching this video now. If you do, I hope this re-review was informative and helpful for you, and I thank you for your viewership. For those of you who are still watching after that warning, I'll try to make this quick. I mentioned earlier that LA Noire is set in Los Angeles, California in the year 1947. If you're even remotely familiar with American history in that time period, you'll probably know that the socio-political climate in the US back then was very volatile indeed. The Second World War had recently ended an Allied victory, and America was most assuredly still riding that triumphant high. There's even a point in a cutscene fairly early on in the game's main story wherein Phelps himself, during his tenure in the Marines, says something to the effect of, "America will take over the world after we win this war." That being said, the game contains quite a bit of what I would personally call exceptionally problematic subject matter. Based on things that Cole and his various partners say to witnesses and suspects alike during each case, it's clear that abuse of power and authority by police officers is definitely prevalent in the context of the game. From the approximately 4 hours and 15 minutes of footage I recorded of LA Noire to be used in this video, I collected 7 separate clips of what I'm collectively calling exhibits of how not to police. I've designated these clips in order from least to most graphic and disturbing, at least in my own opinion, although they are all fairly damning. I'm now going to play all 7 of these clips in order from Exhibit A through Exhibit G. I think it would be best if I let the game speak for itself for the next minute or two.
You need many things for a conviction, young Phelps. A motive, opportunity, hard evidence, and best of all, a confession. If you fail in the former, you can always use a modicum of violence to obtain the latter.
You left-wing leaning parasite. You expect me to sit here and listen to your drivel?
The wallet by the car. Was there anything in it when you arrived?
You accusing me of something, mister?
Do you want the patrolman to hold you down while we turn out your pockets, Mr. Wilkie?
Maybe I checked inside that wallet. Not that I was gonna steal anything. Maybe I took a look. But there weren't no money in there. Not even change.
I'm
tired of your shtick, Morgan. Spill it, or we take you out in the alley and we knock it out of you.
You must ask these questions of Gabriel. I know nothing of these car parts.
Then tell us where he is. If your baby is born in prison, Anna, the corrections officers will take it from you. You will see your son or daughter through a metal grate for half an hour a week.
Phelps, you mind if I shoot this guy? He's getting on my nerves.
What happens to the cars once they cross over the state lines?
I don't know. I just deliver them.
Give me something, Velasco, or I'll take you back to the cells and tell the whole station you're a child molester. How long do you think you'll last?
Okay. I hear you.
I know those clips may have been deeply troubling to many of you, and I apologize for making you sit through them. However, I want to emphasize that I didn't subject you to that possible discomfort without reason. As I'm sure many of our viewers know to at least some extent, these same systemic issues are unfortunately just as commonplace in the real world today as they were in the specific virtual depiction of late 1940s Los Angeles. I know topics like this are probably very uncomfortable for many of you to think about. I say that because I'm right there with you. In the wake of everything that makes up our current circumstances, I don't feel that mine is a voice that needs to be heard right now. However, I also want to emphasize that I do truly believe that if we channel our anger toward these injustices into a collective force for good, we have the ability to change our respective societies for the better. Ultimately, though, I especially want to note that it falls to you, dear viewer, to decide whether what you've seen in LA Noire and games like it is unacceptable to you despite what I've said in this video. I implore you to think very carefully about what I've said today and the circumstances in which I've said my piece before you decide whether or how to take action. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.